We're back.
Okay, there we go. Okay. All right. Well, we are going to move on to our second presentation today. And I want to welcome Ann Irvin to our meeting for today. And there is a presentation that she is going to cover relating to COVID 101, a pharmacist's perspective. So before we get started, Ann, again, welcome. And how about if you give us your background and tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the agenda.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you for letting me present my perspective on what's happening with COVID-19 at the retail level in my very small community in Allentown, New Jersey, which is right outside of Trenton. We have probably a small community of maybe 30,000 that are in our area that are in a very concentrated society where COVID-19 unfortunately has been significantly impacting our community and our neighbors and family. It's been a significant concern with all of my customers. And as you know, with the rollout for the vaccines, it has been very stressful here in New Jersey, trying to make sure that everyone is accommodated in getting the vaccine, which has been very slowly getting out to the neighborhood. So we've been working to alleviate everyone's fears with what's been happening, because it has been so upsetting with the loss of life that has really happened and the debilitating results for those that do survive. So we hear daily of issues that have affected people because of the COVID-19, and it's changed our world completely, as everyone knows. And thank you for letting me explain my neighborhood's position.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do for the next half an hour or so is talk about three primary areas. If I can change the screen here, which is what I'm attempting to do. We're going to talk about the virus and talk about information relative to that. And then we're going to talk about the vaccines, and then actually talk about the area of pharmacy and how they fit into this pandemic. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, or we will have time following this in order to address them specifically. So let's first talking about COVID. And tell us about COVID.
Well, COVID-19 COVID itself is a very novel virus. It is a unknown with us right now. It is my personal belief that it was man-made. It appears that it doesn't follow any of the current information that we know about some of these viruses as to how long we can expect it to be here. Will it come? Will it go? Will it stay with us forever? And with every meeting and phone call and webinar I've had covering COVID, everyone has a disclaimer that what you may hear today may not be what you're going to hear tomorrow or a year from now. And here we've already been in this process for almost a year already with how we've had to adapt with living with COVID. So it's become quite an evolvement of our existence in trying to protect ourselves and protect our family and move beyond what's been happening. And your teachers are a good example of how we're trying to do that at that level. And pharmacists and pharmacies in general are also trying to do that to alleviate the fears that patients have, because they don't have their physicians to go to. They're homebound. They don't go out. I know seniors at this point who still haven't left their home. They are only going out on absolute, bare minimum to limit their exposure because of their risks. So it becomes a very hard thing to explain how such a devastating this devastating COVID could be so unbelievably, covering the gamut of disease states that it wreaks havoc with all kinds of different things, from pneumonia to, everything else, breathing conditions and comatose and things that are just not what we see when you're having, say, a simple flu outbreak, because it has become so severe. So yeah. They're really trying to identify what they can do to control it. But at this point, the scientists have, of course, been working around the clock to identify things. But it's, as we know now, there are variants that are happening and coming from different areas of the world, in fact, that are now showing up in our country. So it's so evolving. I don't think they can really identify specific information yet, but they certainly are working on it. And of course, it is so dangerous because of the devastation of breathing conditions and the organ shutdown that happens and the debilitating result of your body just not responding to it, recovering from the exposure. And I've seen all age groups that, have been affected, and it's been very serious.
You mentioned those variants.
So we're hoping that the vaccine, once it becomes more available, and as you know, that's another big topic of how to control the COVID, is to have the vaccine available to everyone who, first of all, that is wanting to have it, and that it's going to help prevent the continued, out of control COVID exposure that we're having. But again, we're hoping that that's what's going to be a controlling factor. But if there's variations that happen with the COVID, then that's going to be inevitably another change in how they're going to have to handle it. So the two vaccines that are available now, as everyone knows, is the Moderna and the Pfizer. You're not going to see most pharmacies, at least independents, to have this. There are so many restrictions on how this is stored, it being ultra frozen, that the accommodation of a freezer that you need for this has such restrictions that a regular independent pharmacy like me would never be able to manage. There's such restrictions. It's really amazing. We have to do many programs on it just to understand the process of how unstable the product is if it's not ultra frozen. So we're hoping that with the J&J vaccine that hopefully will be released here shortly, that will help to alleviate the bottleneck that's been happening with people getting the Moderna and the Pfizer. I know in New Jersey, most of the patients have been getting Moderna, which is, as everyone knows, a 2-shot process. The Pfizer is 2 shots, first, second dose 21 days later. Moderna is first shot and second dose is 28 days later. They are not recommending at this point, although there is talk of it, that if you have one and you can get your second one of the other, it's okay, but they don't really know yet. So they're just formulating the idea that you're going to stay with the one that you've been given the first time and make sure that you do get the second one the second time. And unfortunately, the supply and demand has just not been able to keep up with the response that everyone has had, at least in my state, for trying to get it. And the rollout has been very cumbersome for people to first get to these sites to get it, and then second to get back for the second dose, which, is supposed to be a part of the whole process to give the body the protection it needs against the COVID too. And again, a vaccine is not 100% effective. It's as good as our science knows at this point. And what it helps to do is to ensure you've got at least some response to give yourself some protection. So it's a defensive mechanism more so than 100% protection, but it's something that our community needs to make sure that we can limit the severe effects that COVID would have to to people who have underlying conditions. As we hear that in the reviews of what happens to people that get exposed.
Well, we also have the same constraints relating to the supply of the Moderna and the Pfizer here in Arizona as well. So it's really been a challenge, and the media has been covering that quite effectively. Can you go into what is the mRNA formula? What makes that different than the next formulation that's coming out?
Well, the mRNA formulation, it has been developed for probably 10, 12 years. It uses a protein to teach our cells how to respond to the COVID. So it does it in a different way than what is coming out with the Johnson & Johnson formulation. It doesn't change your DNA like everyone is suggesting that it does. It just teaches the cell how to respond to the foreign body, which is the COVID, which has entered and penetrated into the system. And at a cellular level, the mRNA is teaching the cell how to respond to the exposure of the COVID. So it blocks it, because the vaccine is introducing that teaching piece of the RNA to make the cell recognize the COVID being foreign and how to defend itself, which is what leads to the protection that your body would normally need to be doing, but it's probably not doing it anywhere near as concentrated enough to make sure that the protection is there. So it's an artificial way to do it, but it helps to give you a significantly over protection based on what our body's defense mechanism is.
And you've had the Moderna.
Yes,
dose
I had the
yourself.
Moderna. My first dose was about 6 weeks ago. The side effects were somewhat mild. Your injection site was very sore, and I hear most people complain about that. There really isn't anything you can do about that. It's just unfortunately the nature of how the body responds to the injection. And then 28 days later, I had received the second Moderna, which was a little bit more uncomfortable than the first. I did have chills, and I don't think it was really a fever so much, but I've heard a lot of people saying that they had the same thing. Again, it's your body showing that it does have a response. Some of us have more of a response than others, but it doesn't mean that it's any less effective. But we're hearing so many patients that really are looking forward to getting it because they know it's going to make a difference, and they really want to make sure that they're going to get it and have that protection, because that's what the vaccine is going to be doing. So doing the flu, the formulation for J&J is developed like the flu, where they take an inactive particle and they can manipulate that into a vaccine that will do a more natural type of immune response. It doesn't mean that it's any less effective, but it does a different way of having the cell recognize how the virus is a foreign particle, and that foreign particle needs to be, deactivated for it not to do the debilitating effects that it does. So it kind of stops the process. So these formulas do not cause the COVID. They do not cause the flu. I know a lot of people believe that sometimes when they get a flu shot or they get a COVID shot that it will precipitate getting that, but that is not true. It doesn't do that at all. So we're hoping that when the Johnson & Johnson and even if the AstraZeneca gets approved, that will help with one shot to really have a lot more people have the protection that we all need to, because this isolation and masks just are not enough. It helps certainly, but it's certainly not enough. That we need the more internal protection that our own bodies can provide. Unfortunately, the short-term and long-term side effects, we're hoping that with the protection that we all have, that the flu and COVID just kind of go away, and hopefully will be eradicated with the scientists working on what will help, prevent that from happening. But everything is so evolving from day to day that they're finding things out every day that we didn't know yesterday. So it becomes a waiting game to figure it all out. And that's what the scientists certainly are doing all around the world.
Right. So we've talked about the virus, we've talked about the vaccines. So as a pharmacy or as a pharmacist and a community pharmacy, so how are you guys then looking to administer the vaccine when you're able to? Because as you mentioned, right, you're only doing the flu variation of the vaccine,
right,
not the other one.
Correct. So my pharmacy, Village Pharmacy in Allentown, New Jersey, we opened in 2004, serving our community. My staff, Barbara and Sharon here with me out front, have decided that we would, because we're in my town, I have no other pharmacy that is administering, that we would provide that to our community. The process requires the pharmacists to be trained about 20 hours to be able to administer vaccines. And it is a countrywide program. So pharmacies now for the last about 10 years have been able to administer vaccines for, flu, shingles, pneumonia, very, very important vaccines that protect the community and protect the individuals, of course, for, very severe disease. So this is not a new role for us, but it is for administering the COVID. So the CDC is requiring pharmacists to have even more training, which we've all been going through, more restriction for storage and information of the requirements that they want to bump the level up of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And training has been what we've been doing and focusing on for the last, at least 6 to 8 months with the rollout of the Moderna and the Pfizer. So the pharmacies that, like mine, only have a refrigeration system in place would never be able to really manage, as I had said, the ultra frozen. The temperatures are just so extreme and very limited with how you can handle it. The refrigerated one has much more ease of administration and storage that would make a big difference. So everything has to be in New Jersey at least scheduled, and then the person would be able to have their shots administered by the pharmacist. And of course, the standard right now is they monitoring the person 15 minutes after the administration to make sure that the person doesn't have an allergic reaction, because they are finding that there are a few having that issue, very rare, of course, but a concern. So that increases your supervision of the patient after having the administration. So my pharmacists are ready and trained and ready to be able to administer, to the patients that are in our neighborhood to be protected, and everyone is really looking forward to get it going, have it start so soon. And I've had a lady today calling me just so upset, saying she has been waiting patiently. She's at the end of her, her nerves just so shot with having to wait, because she's just so concerned. She has an elderly husband. She lives alone. And you just feel you can't do anything, and you're just so limited that they're, the anxiety level, even with like you were saying, the children in school, the adults around are also as extremely upset and nervous and just want to get on with their lives. And that's what we're hoping that the vaccines are going to be able to, allow. And we're hoping to get our lives all back to some normalcy if we can do it.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, okay. Well, those were the prepared questions and the information that we had for the group. What questions do you have for Ann, whether it's on COVID, the vaccine process, or really any pharmacy related topic?
I have a question. Thank you for your presentation. I am assuming then that pharmacies will need to wait for the J&J and AstraZeneca, but you're ready, trained, armed,
Ready to go.
Ready to go. How is there any kind of timeline? And I know that's a difficult question to ask for J&J and AstraZeneca. Do you see anything in 6 months or less coming?
We're expecting the J&J to be very soon. We're probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, based on the Moderna and Pfizer had about a 4-week approval for the EUA, which is the approval that the FDA gives for emergency use for the vaccine. So it's been about 2 weeks now. So we're hoping that the next 2 to 3 weeks there'll be a release. And it sounds like the distribution is just ready to be released as soon as they get the okay. And they have millions of doses ready to go.
That's exciting. And there's a lot of complaints, and I understand it's a complex, monstrously complex process. The rollout, everybody, no matter where I talk to them from, are all disgruntled about the bumps in the road, lots of bumps in the road. You're seeing that too, I'm assuming.
Yep, here in New Jersey, the same issue. Yep, and it's this has never happened before. I mean, I'd always had thought in my mind at some point, whatever happened if there was a requirement for a mass inoculation. Here it has become a part of our lifestyle, and obviously we're getting better at it, but not fast enough. So I know the states are working on it. The health departments are working on it. It's like I said, we're having meetings and webinars, constantly trying to fix the bumps in the road so that people can get the vaccine and have some normalcy again.
Thank you.
I believe that some of the large pharmacy chains are actually getting the current Moderna and Pfizer, because they must have some way to handle the special requirements. But they're being used here, I believe, in Arizona, to service many of the elderly homes and independent living and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. But not fast enough for what everyone is hoping for, unfortunately. There's so many limitations in it that it's a very narrow window to have everything processed and done, and unfortunately it's not fast enough for everyone.
Yeah. And can you share the process that you've had to go through to be approved to get the shots, just kind of generically, so people know what you've been through, to be trained to be able to do that and able to do that?
We had about a 20-hour home study program that required testing and, online product that we had to complete and pass the test as the first level. And then we had to have an 8-hour in-person training where actually we were required and had to pass the hands-on vaccination process where we were actually vaccinating a colleague that we were with to show that we had the proper technique that we had learned from the previous home study training. So it was very intense with having to learn, because again, this is all a medical side of pharmacy, which pharmacists were not really completely exposed to because it was all handled in the physician's office or in the hospital, for example. So the pharmacist stepping up into the role of being more available to administer vaccines really kind of opened up that to pharmacists to be able to do on the neighborhood level. So the vaccines have really been new to what we had to learn, and of course it adds to what we do know, and it's been very big part of having the neighborhood and our community protected from other diseases that are just at the same level of COVID, which people had not really seen to the level that COVID is, of course. But for shingles and pneumonia, a lot of people had not been seriously considering getting those vaccines, but now with how the COVID has developed, we're doing that several times a day, all week. So it has really increased the awareness of having vaccines and then the need for them. So yeah, children get them, and they get a lot of them when they're growing up. The seniors over 65 sometimes lag behind in understanding the importance of the ones that they need to have, but they are just as important because those diseases are as debilitating, and you certainly don't want to deal with them if you can prevent it with a vaccine that's going to help lessen how severe it can be. And it really does help.
Shirley asks, I've heard that there's some thought we might need an annual COVID shot like we get annual flu shots, and this would help defend against the variations over time.
That's what they're saying, and I have heard that, and I would believe that at this point that would probably be true. And if the combination of the flu and COVID were put together, that certainly would be one less bottleneck that would get the vaccine out to everyone. But as I said before, this process has really exposed our health system to realize the gaps that we have in treatment. And this has really helped to iron out the way it needs to be done and rolled out to a large group of people. And unfortunately, at the expense of how COVID has been in our neighborhoods, it certainly needed to be done. And at least we're dealing with it now and getting people protected. And that's the key.
Is there any cost to the vaccine, Anne, for any insured, uninsured, insured? Is it totally free?
It is. Well, the free part is the government owns the vaccine. So it is not charged to an insurance company for the actual product. The administration of the vaccine is paid for by your insurance, because when you'll go, they'll ask you for your insurance. So the administration fee is covered by that. And if there is a person who does not have regular insurance to be billed, then the government will pick up that on as a secondary site. So technically you will not be charged when you walk in. So the government owns it. And that's why everything is scheduled, because they want to make sure the right people get the shot when it's appropriate based on what the criteria is currently, but it will not be charged.
Shirley, you have a question?
Yeah, I would imagine that the single shot would be much more effective in the rural areas where people have trouble getting access to medical care.
Absolutely. Shingles and pneumonia are very important to have. And they're long-term protection. So you don't need to get them every year like you would the flu. But shingles is, your 2 shots are one regimen, and then your pneumonia is 10 years.
No, not shingles. The single shot, the one shot that like Johnson & Johnson
Yes.
would be more effective in rural areas.
Well, I think the Moderna and Pfizer are probably in the 90% protection range, where they're suggesting that the J&J is between 68 and 74 from what I've seen. So it's not quite as effective, but they're seeming to believe that it's now more effective against the variants that are out there. So, but yes, something is better than nothing. So, and one shot's much more convenient than the 2, even as a rural, person would have to deal with getting to the second shot. So, but no, I think it's better than nothing.
Yeah, transportation is always a problem in the rural
Always.
areas, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm from Bergen County, by the way. That's where I live.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, a bit north from us.
Yeah.
We're actually in Monmouth County. So. And one of the things that the government set up was a texting system called V-Safe. And what they'll do is once you get your vaccine, you register with it, and they are going to be monitoring if there's any side effects, so that they haven't been able to test the vaccine under normal or regular conditions to see what the side effects are and what they can expect. You're monitored between the 6-week period of having the first shot and the second one and several weeks after that. So I thought that was a very good rollout for them to address the concerns that people would have. And it makes you feel better that they are really paying attention to what people's complaints are.
Oh, that's
So
good.
anyone getting the shot really should do that.
Good.
I mean, the
I had-
CDC, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've read a number of reports, it's been probably about 3 months ago, that one of the reasons believe that the kids aren't getting the virus as often is because of the MMR inoculation they would have gotten at younger years. And as we have aged, that MMR intolerance has not had any impact whatsoever. So, have you heard anything about that or anything new?
There's so many different theories at this point that it changes every day. So I think that there could be a tie into maybe what type of blood type you may have to have more severe, effects than others. But I think it's at this point, it's still a learning process, and we've only been dealing with this for a year or so. It's really hard to guess, out what other benefits we'll find if there are other kind of connections to things. But the scientists certainly are trying to figure that all out. But I
Can
know
I
my
ask another
community,
question?
they can't wait to have it done, because they're not comfortable going to the large pods that they have set up in New Jersey, which requires a lot of, people to be there. They're doing 1,000 people a day. They don't want 1,000 people a day, being exposed to that. So they really are looking for being able to walk into the pharmacy, have it done, and then go home. And that's what I know everybody in the country is looking for, that community, handling it.
Right.
Could I ask another question?
Sure.
This is totally apolitical. How do you feel the information is that's coming from CDC and NIH? Is that your go-to, your benchmark for how you?
Yes, they are
Education.
the guiding light at this point for how we're handling everything, because with having the emergency approval, that changes how the information is given to us in this case, because they are dictating everything, and they're really not allowing the manufacturers to make much points in how we're doing what we're doing. It's all coming from the CDC completely. In fact, to be able to administer a vaccine, be able to administer the COVID vaccine, we had to actually sign an agreement with the CDC. So you're not really doing it independent of them. They are really regulating everything completely, and they own it. The government owns it, so that's why it's being so directed through the CDC.
Okay.
So, but they have a lot of information that's been put out.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
And
So
I've heard
usually
that,
it's the manufacturers that provide a lot of the information, such as, like doing any pneumonia. We do a lot of programs with that, but you're not seeing that at all with any of the COVID vaccines, because it's all through the CDC only. And it's distributed through the CDC, through the government, and then to the counties. And then the health departments in the counties are distributing it, down to the next levels.
Mhm.
So, which is a bit different than how everything else is done.
and I've heard once the vials are open, there's a timeline. And is there a difference between, not that it matters probably at all, a difference of how much were injected with either two of the shots? And have you heard how much will be maybe administered from the J&J shot?
The volume is from the multi-dose vial that the products come in, and they have to be reconstituted, because some of them are like a dry particle that have to be reconstituted and then withdrawn and injected. So really it's based on the formula that the manufacturer works with to have the dose chosen as to the volume. So for example, the Pfizer one is 0.3 mLs and the Moderna is 0.3, but that doesn't mean that it's not effective because one is smaller than the other. It's kind of like an orange and a tangerine. They're very, very similar and they're like a cousin, but it is different, but it doesn't mean it's any less effective by a different volume. So that's not really a concern because that's the scientists take that into account when they're determining how much dose they want. And obviously probably less is better, of course, because that way you can have more into those small vials that the product is put into.
But you haven't heard yet for the J&J one, what that may be. when it
No,
comes
not
out.
yet. That information has not been released yet because they're still awaiting the approval from the government for it to be used under the emergency use authorization. And until that is out, I don't think they're really giving any specifics yet. I'm sure they know what it is, but they're not allowed to really say yet. They're having to wait for the government to approve everything. And that's really the primary way the information will be given to everyone once it's been approved.
And if we fast forward a year from now, is there any way to know if we need to continue to get an annual shot, whether or not we will have an option to get the flu formulation or the mRNA formulation?
I would think that they would probably be able to combine the similar types. If you're going to have the mRNA, that would still probably be separate from the flu one. Of course, they would have to determine the stability of adding the two flu type vaccines together, but I'm sure to accommodate everybody's getting it done, it would make more sense to do the combination. So, and as they've learned with the flu, we used to do it just with 2 variations. Now we're up to 4. So, you know, it's not much of a difference in the volume, I think, that they would need to inject. And I don't think it'd be too difficult to be able to incorporate the similar style vaccines into, you know, one injection. Certainly would make things a lot easier.
Well, could we talk variants just like the flu strain? I mean, is it really like a COVID strain? I mean, I'm just talking terminology, because as you know, with the flu, you got to figure out what strain of a flu shot they're going to
They make educated guesses to determine which variation they're going to use. So things they evolve over the years, plus things change for where, I guess the environment of waning and changing of the exposure of things, and as much traveling as we do, you know, people from around the world are bringing things to us and we're bringing things to them that we were never ever exposed to before. So it's an educated guess as to what's going to be the most effective coverage for what they believe is going to go on at that time frame. But you know, it's a guess. Some years they do very well in getting the formulation correct, and other years, you know, they just don't. So it's the scientists trying to determine with the information that they have what is the best way to go. But I don't think there's any specific crystal ball for them to unfortunately figure it out. But they do the best they can with what they know. So, but what we know, we use and use that to protect everybody.
What makes the variants so lethal? Is it because of they're brand new to coming from South Africa, coming from England? Is it just the lack of exposure of it, or
I think it is. I think our body, we've never been exposed to any of these types of things before, and we don't really have a response because we've not been exposed to them, so our body doesn't know how to handle them. And I think because of that, sometimes people just have a more reactive system to a foreign particle in your system. And as some of us have such allergic reactions to things, it's almost a mirror image of that. You just end up having such an overloading internal response that your organs just can't overcome that because it's so severe. Because it's an allergic reaction of all the different types of defenses that we have. You know, the body's trying to fight this stuff, but sometimes our body just is overwhelmed by that.
And we've maybe been able to induce a mild response of sorts to the COVID-19 that we know, but not yet to the variant. Is that the deal? Because some of them are pretty frightening in the way that they're being presented, like worse
that's correct.
than. Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
Okay.
But I believe that we've all been exposed because this has been in our environment for a year now. And we all know people that were sick well before they announced it was COVID and that COVID was in our areas. So, I know a lot of people that said, oh, I was really, really sick in November. And they didn't really say that COVID was around in our area until March, but I was really sick and my symptoms really seemed like that. And I think that really was here a lot earlier than they really had known. Because of how, people were saying that they were just so sick and they recovered. But, I don't know if they can say now with doing the testing, that the antibodies are there and can protect you. Because again, they just don't know. You assume the antibodies are there and going to protect you, but I'm not sure that they've determined that that's really true or not.
And you're not doing the antibody test, or are you?
We have not decided to do them. There's a lot of community areas community groups that are doing it around us. So it didn't make sense for us to step out and do that because it was so available. But if I was in a more remote area where we didn't have as many facilities that were offering, I certainly would have. But again, it tells people that they're sick. So, it's really just for tracking to see, where it is and how bad it is. Personally, I don't think I'd want to try to know if I had it or not, because, if I had to know, I know I'm sick. So, it's a tough balance.
Very interesting.
Well, there is an upside though, and that is, I understand that the CDC can't report any numbers on the flu because it's so low.
Yes.
It's nice to know people now know to not go to work if they're sick and to wash their hands,
Yes, absolutely. That has definitely reduced transmission of a lot of things. There's been no pneumonia, to any degree. There's absolutely been no flu at all. So the mask wearing has really dropped a lot of that completely off the charts. And that's a good thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely dropped it off the charts for sure. But we're much more aware of germs now. We're washing our hands more. We're using, sanitizer, and that really has lowered transmission significantly of other things, which is amazing. So people are listening. Finally, that's important.
Because we're scared. We finally got the word.
Yes, yes, we did. Yes, it's sunk in finally. So.
I know some places where I go, and especially when I got the shot up in Tucson Convention Center, we have to wear double masks. So you can't, normally we have to have the single, but some places, like I said, I go, we have to have the double mask. And you come with one, they hand you another just to make sure that something's not hiding underneath or whatever. So hopefully that may help as well. But I know people don't like it, not even the first one.
Well, wearing a mask all day in a retail setting for 10, 12 hours becomes very tiresome. Your ears hurt, you can't breathe, you can't catch your breath. I know it's very important to do, but when you have to wear it nonstop, it's a totally different story. And I don't know how physicians and nurses in hospitals wear those KN95s, because they are just so restrictive in your breathing that anyone who had any kind of breathing issues certainly would be, as the one man told me yesterday, claustrophobic wearing a mask. So, it has its good points, but then it has the bad points too. So I hadn't realized, yes, someone could certainly be claustrophobic wearing a mask. Some of them are very, very tight fitting and, very hard to breathe through. So
They're starting to advertise a product on TV that's like a little plastic cage that you put over under your mask and over your nose. So
yes,
that gives you space between your nose and your mask. That
yes,
makes it easier to breathe.
I think that's a very good idea. Yep, that is true. As long as it fits properly, because that's the thing. If it doesn't fit properly, you're not really doing anything. You've got to breathe. So, but
Yeah.
no, I think that really would work out for a lot of people, because it's very uncomfortable wearing those all day, so, but it's a good thing.
Okay, last call. Any other questions or comments? All right, and again, thank you so much for bringing your expertise and answering all the
Thank you.
questions for us. We really appreciate it.
No
So,
problem. Thank you very much.
Great
Talk
job.
to you soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Maybe we'll have her back in about 6 months and then a year, so that way she can give us an update.
Yeah, that was great.
So I
that
have one
con-
announcement to make before you start the business part, Jane. Some of you, longtime members anyway, know Carol Dow. And I was informed by her sister yesterday or the day before that she's home now. So
Oh,
you know,
great.
that's really good news for those of you that know Carol and her
Oh,
many
good.
contributions to the branch. So I'll just start with that as an announcement.
Great. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes and just talk about the March Madness event that we're looking to host on the Teachers Trading Post that we're sponsoring. With the funding or the grant, I should say, from the state, we're looking to spend $500 and hopefully be able to increase that pot to more money from donations from our members in order to fulfill additional or more wish lists from our teachers. So more information is going to be coming out regarding it. We look to start publicizing it starting next week. So come March, we're looking for those teachers that have become a part of the Trading Post to offer ideas and things that they're going to look to do to celebrate March Madness, which could include something relating to St. Patrick's Day, a girls or women event of some sort, doing something green along that line. So we look to get them to provide that information to us, and then we're going to build some criteria in order to grant the wish list that come in. We hope to be able to fulfill as many as we can, which is the reason why we're looking to look to members to see if they want to, again, contribute to that effort. What we're doing differently this time also with this event is we're going to have it exclusive to Jonathan's Educational Resources. It's the local school supply store on North Stone. I was actually there last weekend, met him and his wife. Oh, they're just a joy. 33 years in Tucson providing school supplies as prior students, or excuse me, prior teachers themselves. So they really go above and beyond. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to give them, Jonathan, that is, the opportunity to continue to support the community and the teachers locally. So he's excited, we're excited, some more information to come. So any
Well,
other announcements? Oh, go ahead.
Jane, I'll tell you what, I'll kick off the fundraising by putting in another $200. So you're up to 700.
Well, thank you. And we actually have already received a donation also earmarked for that. So your 200, that 200 with the 5, we're already up to 900. So that is fabulous.
Wow,
Thank you.
we're getting there. And
Yeah.
it's so much easier to have Jonathan's fulfill the wish list and keep it all local. So, you know,
Okay. Any other announcements?
I think we need to talk to Lori about Nick Whistle. I mean, so why don't you chime in with what's happening and tell them what Nick Whistle stands for, since I never can remember.
I can't remember either. I just know it's Nick Whistle. Lakin has the application went out, and we're directing people that, as we talked about in our board meeting, people that can afford to pay the money and get reimbursed are directed to the state. We're targeting students who cannot afford to pay the money upfront and get reimbursed. And then we have an application for them. It's due on the 23rd, and then we're going to go through that and award our I was going to say nominees, but the people who will be going to the leadership council from our organization. And then we're asking them to come and talk to our organization about their experience.
Yeah, Nick
So
Whistle, it's a conference that's held every year. Normally it's in person. Normally it costs for airfare and a substantial amount of entry fee that includes room and board. This year it's all virtual. So it gives us an opportunity to have a lot more college age people, both men and women, okay, who participate in this. And we're aiming at, Lori, aren't we aiming at first generation?
first generation, yes.
First generation students is kind of, you know, that this is the first person in their family that's gone to college, and so that give them a special leg up.
Is that spelled like how it sounds?
No,
Oh, Jane found it. Look, here she is.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes and I got a little confused on that one.
Great
Oh,
question.
there we go. Thank you.
it's in the chat.
So once again, we're really trying to make sure that people around here know that AAUW exists and that we're providing benefits to different populations, you know, both university students as well as the teachers.
Slide
Anybody
order.
else? Anna, do you have anything from the state level? You're
Anna,
on mute.
I'm trying to unmute. No, I don't have anything. We had a great turnout for Legislative Day. Some of you were on there. Definitely that was recorded, and Jane has that on our website for the state. So there's a link for that. I mean, I guess I let you in on a little background. The night before, I had gotten a phone call that none of the speakers were going to be available because they were all going to be in the committee meetings. So we were thrilled when actually they all came. So turned out really well. And I think, like some of you have mentioned, it does make a difference. That makes it easier for people to attend these kind of events without having to drive at the crack of dawn to be there, and you know, the 2 or 3 hours to go back and forth to Phoenix. So I think it was great. We are planning other statewide events again through Zoom. So we'll keep working on our education and our other issues that we're supporting at a state level.
Shirley, I'd like you to chime in about the special Arizona opportunity for us called Request to Speak. Could you just give us a second about what that is, especially for the new members?
yes, is there anyone here who is registered with Request to Speak? Good. This is a way that you can have a say, usually thumbs up for a bill that's currently in the state legislature in committee. Once it's out of a committee, now a bill, as you know, can go from one committee to another committee. So as long as a bill is in a committee, you can have a say on it through your computer. And there's a website. I can try to put it up. I don't know if I can do it right now, but it's azleg.gov. If you go to that and click on, let me see, hold on 1 second.
Well, Shirley, why don't you send it to me and I'll put it in the newsletter, the next one that comes out.
Okay, I try to do it. I send messages all the time about bills that are in the legislature. Not only do we have the usual run of anti-abortion bills, but there are at least 34 bills trying to restrict voting access to people. Either the way you register, the way you can, whether or not you can even mail a ballot, how often you have to vote, how your mail-in ballot gets brought, whether someone else can bring it to the polls for you, whether or mail it for you. There are all these restrictions proposed, and we're trying to fight all of them. Arizona has had mail-in balloting for 20 years, and it's been very successful. I think we were one of the first, if not the first, state to have routine mail-in, no excuses, absentee balloting. And it's since spread to other states, and it has definitely increased participation in the voting process. Not necessarily one party over another, that it doesn't seem to make any difference. It's just a matter of participation by the people. And there are all kinds of restrictions. Some individuals and parties and organizations are trying to limit the participation in the voting process. And some others want to make it as broad as possible. So that's something that you have to watch for. I get information mostly on the weekends. They tend to have, I get about 4 organizations that send lists of proposed bills. And I try to pick, since some of them go into a great deal of detail on a whole lot of bills, I try to just select out the ones that AAUW our mission in terms of assisting women is most concerned with. But I'll give you sources where you can always get more information. So it's a busy season. Weekends, I'm especially tied to the computer, and our Great Decisions group meets on Mondays. So I'm not only studying the legislative bills, but I'm also boning up for Great Decisions for our Monday morning meetings. So it's always a busy time for me.
Well, I really want to thank you for the service, but I also want to thank Joan and Jane who organized this particular Saturday meeting. So thank you very much for stepping up and providing your sister, Anne, as one of the key speakers. And of course, we really, I think, enjoyed Sarah and Nicole as the local TRIC teacher leaders. So
Can I just add, by the way, I'm sorry, you did ask me at first about request to speak. There are organizations, one easy one is oh gee, I just drew a blank. It's voter, it's some beyond voting. Jane, can you help me out? Do you know what it is? It's Civic Engagement Beyond Voting is the name of the organization. And if you go to that, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, just Google it. It's a .org, and it's nonpartisan, but they will register you for request to speak. You do have to be registered. It's easy to do from your computer. Once you are registered, all you have to do is go and sign on. You do have to know pretty much the name of the bill that the number of the bill that you're interested in. You don't necessarily have to know which committee it's in, but it might help. But you can do a search for it. And when it comes up, you can state your opinion, whether you're for it or against it. And if you want to make a comment, you can make a comment online now. And the legislators do pay attention to it, because I've spoken to some of them. And they say, yes, it makes a difference to know how the voters are feeling on a particular issue.
yeah, great. Jane, is that out on the AAUW Arizona site, all the information about request to speak?
No, we have not posted that on the website, on the state site, no.
It might help to have a link to that.
Anna's saying it is.
Yeah.
Then maybe I can just go there and link to that.
I'm gonna go out there and check right now. Hold on.
Okay.
Linda, are you going to share our exciting news from yesterday?
Oh, sure. No, why don't you share our exciting news from yesterday morning during breakfast?
I talked to Dolores. I don't want to mispronounce her name, but she's the executive provost at Pima Community College. And she is signing up Pima Community College as a partner. So I'll be following back up with her this upcoming week. I'm putting some information together, talking logistics and things like that. So I'll definitely be keeping everybody updated about that. I was very happy at 8:45 yesterday morning. We had a great talk. She's very impressed what we're doing. I mentioned the different projects about TREC, the Tucson Trading Post. Very impressed of our ideas, how we move forward with those, and how we give back to the community. So that made my day yesterday.
So that's Dolores Duran Cerda.
Yes. She was ready to write the check yesterday.
Perfect.
So I'm putting information together for her. Want to make it as simple as possible. And then, like I said, I'll follow up and see how we can, work this all out and start getting students and teachers. We need to check. And I'm not sure, and Jane and I were trying to figure out, when we have these type of relationships, are faculty also able to join for the $10 like students?
I don't think so.
No.
So that's what I want to clarify first.
I think it's just for students is the $10. I think as teachers and yeah.
Well,
Professionals.
just to clarify, I think to be an E-student at an affiliate university is free. So you're at the national level, you're called an E-student. That does not, however, make you a member of the state or the branch. Okay, and so the $10 we're talking about for this year, for the rest of this year till June 30, would be for the state dues of $9 and our current $1 a year, which we lowered because of the impact of economic impact of COVID. So any student can be a member of all three for $10 a year or free for the e-branch. Okay, so you know, we want to encourage them all to belong to the branch, but we also, you know, we want to make sure that we avail ourselves of the partnership. At Pima Community College, I can tell you, coming from California, I found that the opportunities at Pima are amazing for young people. So you know,
Good.
who are not necessarily, well, it's a gateway to U of A and other four-year colleges, but it's also a fantastic vocational opportunity. So this gives us a different audience, student audience to reach out to. Congratulations, Joan, for doing that. I know how much persistence it took.
Just an office hour that I attended with her. And we talked about some other stuff and then I led right into that and she was all over it and wanted to pay right then and there if she could. So she was ready.
That's
Was
Oh,
awesome.
this is on recording. Oh,
Yeah, that's okay. She was a speaker at the Fall Forum over a year ago, when the last one we had in live in the West, I guess the Valley, whatever that was, Northwest Valley. And so she was a speaker for that, one of the panels. So she went up there, and so I've been in contact with her and the chancellor. And so we've been trying to get this moving forward for a while. So I'm so glad you got that, Joan. Thanks.
It shows how important it is to get people involved with us, you know, and it may take a while for things to percolate, but eventually that, you know, you can do that. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity and we need to, at the next board meeting, talk about how we capitalize on all of this.
right. And Anna, real quick, and for anybody else, I mean, we got a correspondence email that Dr. Lambert is one of 4 finalists for the community college system in San Diego. So he'll be moving forward with that. No selections have been made, but this recently just came out to inform us that he's one of 4 finalists. Doesn't mean he's leaving and doesn't support, but you know, I think with Dolores and, you know, if he stays, whatever, I think we now have the momentum behind us now.
That's great. Thank you all. Is there anything else? I don't think so. All right. I'm gonna-
I have a housekeeping question.